Oats are the nervine glue that holds everything together. Now, this is a statement from herbalist David Hoffman. And if you are not familiar with the term nervines, it simply refers to herbs that support the nervous system. And these herbs are incredibly helpful allies that nature has given us. And so in this video, I wanted to talk specifically about oats because as someone who has struggled with chronic sleep and stress challenges in the past, I found and continue to find oats incredibly helpful and soothing and healing because it really just like supports my nervous system without creating any extremes. So what I mean is it doesn't take me up or take me down. It just leaves me feeling balanced and grounded. And the other reason why I wanted to talk about oats today is because I recently recorded a video for the women in my membership. And in that video, I talked about different herbs that can be useful for supporting sleep. Okay. And that video is actually part of my restorative sleep course that I opened up to members this month. And so I thought it would be a good idea to actually just take what I talked about in that video as far as it relates to oats and share it with you because this is an herb I've been using for many years. I'm pretty sure I'll be using it for the rest of my life too. So let's jump right in and start by first looking at like just some general things to know about oats before we get into the specific ways of which parts of the plant to use and how to use it. So if we go back to that statement that David Hoffman made, so the statement I shared at the top of the video, the other thing that he said related to oats has to do with the fact that not only is it a glue, but he also referred to it as a supportive herbal matrix. And in his words, it's an herbal matrix to which you add other nervines. Now, when I hear that, the way I interpret that is that oats are really foundational. And so let's say you're making a tea, right? You have your oats, but then you bring in some other nervines like chamomile and lavender, and you include them. And the fact that you've put them together with oats is going to give you something that is much more supportive and much more effective for the nervous system and maybe the goals that you're trying to achieve. Because if you look at that blend of like, you have chamomile and lavender on the one hand, those are more associated with sleep because they have more of a sedating effect, even if they're on the mild side of sedation, but they have more of a sedating effect. Whereas oat straw really just is neutral, right? But since it has that matrix glue effect, it's just going to make sure that everything works together and holds together nicely. So that's a way of thinking about that statement, is that oat straw is really foundational for nervous system health. The other thing about oats is that it is classified as a tonic nervine. Now, according to Hoffman, once again, tonic nervines basically strengthen the nervous system, they support brain function, they help to heal nerves. And he considers oats to be the most important of all the tonic nervines. So that's saying quite a bit. So I wanted to share this with you because, this herb, from my experience, is really powerful, but not aggressive. Okay. And I feel that it is super underrated and just really generally overlooked. And, if you're someone who is not reading books about herbalism or you're not listening to podcasts from herbalists, it's very easy to just not be aware of oats in terms of how they work with the nervous system because most of the sort of marketing and advertising from the wellness industry focuses completely on other herbs when it comes to things like stress and sleep. So this is why I thought it would be a good idea to make this video just focus on that. So now I want to talk about the 3 ways that you can take advantage of herbs and of oats. And the first one is actually to just go ahead and eat oatmeal. This is legitimately considered a good way to support your nervous system, at least from a nutritional perspective. Okay, so when you consume oatmeal, one of the things that you get is B vitamins, and your body needs B vitamins for nerve function. The other benefit is you get beta glucans. This is a type of fiber that is helpful for gut health, and we know that the gut is essential when it comes to circadian rhythm, when it comes to even our ability, I think, to respond to stress and different things like that, because we know that stress will have a negative impact on the gut. So anything we can do nutritionally to feed the gut what it needs, that's going to help us long term. Also, consuming oats gives you carbohydrates and protein, and that combination can also be helpful for just providing your body with steady fuel. And that, in its own way, for some people, can feel calming and relaxing. And last but not least, you also have a group of compounds called alkaloids in oats, and these have antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. So there's quite a bit going on here just eating oatmeal. And I do think it's interesting to see all the benefits, especially when it relates to like those B vitamins and nerve function, because we're in an era where it's very much about low carb, right? So maybe in the 80s and part of the 90s, it was very much running away from fat. Now it's more of a movement of avoiding carbs. And I always wonder how much of an effect that's having on our nervous systems, because when it comes to B vitamins, it's not just oats that contain them. Grains as a whole are considered a good plant source of B vitamins. So I really genuinely wonder often like how much of our avoiding that food group is maybe contributing to more difficulty when it just comes to the nervous system's ability to do very basic things. And God knows, basic things really is everything, because the nervous system controls everything. So really, the word basic is not even doing it justice. But I think you know what I mean. I just wonder how much of an effect that might be having on us as a people, because maybe everybody is not meant to do low carb, or maybe not very extreme forms of it. Something to think about. So that is the first way that you can take advantage of oats. The second way, and this is where we get into the herb aspects of the oat plant. So there is milky oats. So milky oats, this is basically harvested during a short window in the plant's growth cycle. And it basically, I think, lasts about a week. So you have about a 1 week window as that plant is growing, during which you get what is called milky oats. And it's called milky oats because during that stage, the seed contains a white substance, right? That basically, like from what I've heard, I've not done this myself, but from what I've heard, like if you were to actually go to a farm and squeeze the grain at that time, the seed contains a white substance in it. That white substance is what is really restorative for the nervous system. And this is where we start going into like really, I would say, traditional use of oats for nervous system support. In addition, you still get the B vitamins and you still get the alkaloids. Now, thinking of when you look up some of the uses of milky oats, you see that it's being used for like what we would call burnout, right? So nervous exhaustion, used for maybe irritability, or somebody who's maybe just like too reactive, right? So in extremes, maybe in mood. So things of that nature is where you'll see that milky oats can be quite helpful. All right. So that's that part of the plant. And then the other part of the plant that you can take advantage of, which is the one that I personally have used for years, is oat straw. Okay, so this is basically the dried green stalk of the oat plant. And this is rich in minerals, things like silica, calcium, magnesium, also contains those B vitamins. And it's also considered a restorative, just like the milky oats. Now, since I do not have personal experience, the only time I've used milky oats is just once, and I used it in a blend with other herbs, so I can't really speak to its effects. But from what I've read in the literature on herbalism and listening to other herbalists talk, my understanding is that sometimes it is recommended that you would use milky oats more for acute stress situations, and you would use oat straw for chronic stress. So, and that's kind of the reason why I jumped on oat straw. It's really because I got this understanding that if I'm going to go long term and just be drinking a tea even for the rest of my life, that's a good one to do. All right. So that's my general understanding about, I can't say that that's a hard and fast rule because a lot of things in in herbalism are not always very black and white. You still have to really consider the individual and what's going on with them. So I know there are nuances to this, but I wanted to point out to you that oat straw is, that's my go-to. So those are your three options: oatmeal, milky oats, oat straw. Now, in terms of how to use them, so again, get yourself some oats. If you can, make sure that they're organic, simply because oats are definitely a plant that we spray a lot with pesticides, from what I've heard. So organic, if you can get it. Rolled oats or still cut oats. So stay away from the instant oats because it's really not the same thing. Then when it comes to the milky oats, this one you want to get a tincture, okay? Because that white substance that is in the oat, when it's in that young milky oat stage, you can't extract it very well or even much at all in water. So you want a tincture because tinctures are usually made with high proof alcohol, and that alcohol is what is really good at extracting the medicinal benefits from that white substance, and that is what helps to restore, a drained, exhausted, depleted nervous system. All right. So tincture for milky oats. And then for the oat straw, you can do a long infusion, or you can do a regular tea, you can do a long infusion, you can do a decoction. So regular tea would literally, maybe you take, 2, 3 teaspoons. You can use quite a bit of oat straw. Like I said, it's not sedating. So it's definitely one where you can use it liberally and not really worry so much about what's going to happen to you. So you could make a regular tea with like 2 to 3 teaspoons, steep that in like, a cup or two of water for 20 minutes or so. You could mix it with other herbs, like I mentioned earlier, where you bring in some lavender, you bring in some peppermint, or you bring in some chamomile. Those are all nervines, okay? The other option is a long infusion. I have a video where I show you how to do this, and this is the method that I use. And the point with a long infusion is you're doing two things at once. So the main point with a long infusion is that you're trying to do something that is really rich in minerals. So unlike a short steep tea where you steep for a short time with a small amount of herb, with a long infusion you use more herb, you steep overnight. That gives you a really mineral rich tea and still gives you all the other nervous system, like restorative nervous system benefits of the oat straw. And then the third option is a decoction. So a decoction is really where you simmer herbs over a stovetop. Not something that I do a lot, but it is another way. Especially some people do this instead of a long infusion. So they will go ahead and simmer it for 30 minutes, 40 minutes even, right? To really, because sometimes the heat can be helpful. That steady heat over a long period of time, let me say, can be quite helpful for extracting even more than the long infusion. But I've not done that method personally. But those are your options. So that's what I wanted to share with you when it comes to the oat plant. And one thing that I want you to remember as you start contemplating whether it's oats or any other herb, the thing to always remember is that, getting good sleep, reducing your stress, like, it's never one thing that is like a magic bullet, right? So herbs are beautiful. They have their place because they provide nutrition and other chemicals that are doing things that, quite frankly, science doesn't fully understand, but we just know that some plants have an affinity for certain parts of the body. So we know that oats have an affinity for the nervous system. It means when they get in the body, they travel to that part of the body. What the mechanism is exactly, we don't. I don't worry about it. I'm just grateful that nature gave this to us to help us when we need it. Okay, but herbs alone can't do everything. So if you are looking to improve your sleep, to reduce stress, right, because they tend to go together, you still want to think about things holistically. You still want to think about restoring your energy levels and your health through things like mindfulness practices with meditation. You want to really also focus on movement, right? Because there are many different ways of moving the body. Some of those movements can be very restorative, some can be more depleting. but you want to also start learning that fine art of like tuning into your body and having like a buffet of movement practices that you can lean on, or a buffet of mindfulness and meditation practices that you can lean on, as well as a buffet of herbs. You don't need to use all herbs. You don't need to do all types of exercise, but you do need to be aware of what your options are, so you know, because some days you might feel better with one herb versus another, right? And your body will tell you that as you start incorporating these practices into your daily life. And this is the type of thing that I am sharing in my membership. It's the type of thing I'm sharing in the restorative sleep course, is to really how you take that holistic approach to sleep, because that is what helped me to finally get to the point where now I know exactly what allows me to sleep, and I know exactly what would get in my way of sleeping. So I don't have that surprise element of like, oh, am I going to sleep tonight or not? Right? Because that used to be quite a stressful thing to deal with. The maybe part is really frustrating. So if this is something that you need help with, I invite you to join my membership. I'm going to leave a link in the description. And if you found this helpful, I would love it if you gave it a thumbs up. If you have any comments, questions, any type of feedback, share them below. And if you know anyone that would benefit from this information, please do share this video with them. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.